Does your pet have cancer? If so, I'm sorry. But I've got 4 things that you can use for your pet with cancer. Let me talk a little bit about cancer. I'm Doc Rob Silver. I'm a holistic and integrative veterinarian of 40 years. And one of the most common problems I ever get to see in my holistic practice are cancer patients. Many people have had bad experiences in their own families, with themselves, with the use of these aggressive and strong cancer therapies like radiation and chemotherapy. And many of them, even though they might be helpful in prolonging their pets' lives or even curing the cancer they're in, refuse to use these therapies because of their bad experiences. And I completely understand that. So it's for that reason that I get to see so many cancer patients. And I've developed some good strategies for addressing cancer. Now, I don't think these are a substitute for visiting an oncologist or for having the appropriate cancer therapies that they suggest. Sometimes cancer could be so aggressive that it's going to kill your animal, sorry to say that, before the natural therapies that we're trying to get to work have time to work. So that's oftentimes what I'll say is, you want your pet to live, let's use some of these cancer therapies first. Let's try to mitigate their side effects with these supplements or with maybe a reduced dosage of those. And then let's add these supplements on because we know your pet is at least going to live a week or 2 longer. Because it's got to take, with my experience with these natural supplements is it takes 2 weeks to a month minimum for them really to have a substantial effect. And many times it can take longer. Fish oil, for instance, which is something that I strongly recommend for almost any condition, but especially good with cancer patients when you use a high dosage of it. The studies show it takes 3 months for fish oil to kick in sufficiently to have an adequate anti-inflammatory activity, in your pet's body. So, I'm a holistic veterinarian of 40 years experience treating a lot of cancer patients. I'm not an oncologist, but I totally respect what the oncologists do. That's got to be a pretty tough job to deal with so many animals that aren't going to make it. I don't know that I have the heart to do that full time. But as an integrative vet, I feel like I'm able to offer kinder and gentler therapies that even if they're not going to cure my patient, they're going to improve its quality of life. And they're going to improve that time, that last part in its life, its end of life period, where I can improve the relationship between you, their parent, and them. Instead of having them suffering from the side effects of invasive surgeries or chemotherapy or radiation, their quality of life is improved. None of us lives forever, and many pet parents choose to not use the strong therapies and to allow their pets to live out their normal lives, their normal lifespan with the cancer. And these supplements can help. So let me outline my 4-step program for supplements for cancer. I've already mentioned the first step. That's the fish oil. Fish oil is just awesome and goes good with so many conditions: renal disease, inflammatory disease, dermatitis, and cancer. And very powerful as long as you're using the right dosage, which is generally pretty high. Fish oil, that's a given. Diet is hugely important. I was always fascinated that when in my practice, that when I would do a cancer consult and I would put aside 90 minutes to talk with that client about their pet's cancer and learn all the details that I could and help them not just with treating the disease, but also helping them emotionally. This is a really tough time, as you know, if your pet has cancer, for dealing with the possibility of losing your beloved 4-legged friend. My gosh. So diet is important. And that's oftentimes what clients would ask me. I say, what are your goals in coming to see me today? They go, well, I'd like to get my dog on a good diet. And of course, I'd like him to live forever, but let's be realistic. So what we do is we look at what feeds the cancer versus what feeds the pet. And we know that cancer tends to thrive on simple sugars and carbohydrates. Really eats that stuff up and needs those to survive. It will metabolize a little bit of protein, but it metabolizes no fat at all. So the strategy is to reduce the amount of carbohydrates you're feeding, increase the protein moderately, but increase the fat substantially. And what that does is that creates what's called a ketogenic diet. And the ketogenic diet does not feed the cancer because it creates these ketone bodies, which are not carbohydrates, and the cancer needs the carbohydrates to feed on. So this is a very good approach to use. It's not that easy a diet to create. There's very few commercial products out there. It's something that I think is better off being done under the supervision of a veterinary nutritionist. I do some of that consulting myself. It takes an attention to detail on the part of the pet parent, and many would like to go that route, but many just feel it's too much much, too busy, too much work, all that stuff. But there are other ways that we can provide a lower carbohydrate diet, add extra fats with fish oil and medium chain triglycerides, for instance, and increase the protein just a little bit. Now, one of the things that I think is a problem with diets for cancer are the commercially processed foods, the kibble. The kibble's heated at very high temperatures and subjected to very high pressures in order to create that little extruded bit that your dog eats. Well, that temperature and pressure of processing the food ingredients alters the molecular structure and actually turns it into something that is slightly toxic. It turns it into what's called a glycotoxin. So feeding fresh, wholesome food, not necessarily raw. The raw food depends on the pet and whether it's undergoing chemotherapy and its immune system and everything else. But even just plain kitchen cooking of food is better than the high temperatures and pressures that we see in commercial food. So there are a number of sources on the internet of companies that will prepare food for your pet and ship them to you. There's sources on the internet with diet recipes and things you can follow if this is something that is of interest to you. So after fish oil and diet, we want to look at mushrooms. You know, mushrooms have been used for hundreds, thousands of years in humans to treat human cancer. You know, it was only until 2012, just a few years ago, where they published a study with turkey tail in dogs that had hemangiosarcoma, and they found that the turkey tail actually created better outcomes in this study than dogs that were on chemotherapy. And that got a lot of pet parents interested in looking at mushrooms and really increased their usage of turkey tail particularly, but also many, many other mushrooms. And so, yes, I definitely recommend mushrooms and that they be given daily at a very high dosage. And you want to make sure that what you're giving as a mushroom product really has mushrooms in it. Some companies will grow the mycelium on grain and dry that, and they call that a mushroom. And it only has maybe 10%, 5% of the total immune potency of the mushroom itself. You don't want to give that to a pet with cancer. Plus, it has about 60% carbohydrates in it from grain. Don't want to give that to your pet either. So make sure it's really a mushroom or a real mushroom, which is what we sell on the Well Pet Dispensary. And I've got a link for that below. You should check it out, see what we've got. I think you'll be very happy with what you find. And I guess I need to talk about the fourth tool that we can use to address cancer. And that tool are hemp extracts. And hemp extracts have been found to be helpful for pets with cancer. It could help with appetite, it could help with some of the discomfort, it could help improve their quality of life so they're happier. And in some cases, some cancer types are actually sensitive to those molecules that are found in the hemp extracts. So worthwhile looking at that as well. And we've got one study that found that CBD, cannabidiol, does have a benefit when for cancer cells that are derived from dogs that were grown in tissue culture. So that's my advice. You know, I'm so sorry if your pet has cancer. It's a difficult journey, but hopefully this information can help to some extent. I wish you well. I wish your pet well. Take care.